I don't know why I did that. All right. Starting off hot. Welcome into another episode of the Draft Podcast, presented by the Gem City Sports Podcast Network, your home for serious NFL draft evaluation. I'm Paul Adamaszek. Thank you for joining me. It's March 3rd, 2026, 51 days away from the NFL draft in Pittsburgh, and Combine hangover season is officially upon us. The spandex has been shed. The stopwatches are cooling off. Every year, the Combine serves as a proving ground for prospects in front of decision makers from all 32 NFL franchises, and while the on-field drills provide the quantifiable data, the Combine is just as much about the narratives that emerge through the interview process, players exceeding expectations, of which we'll spend a bulk of the show getting into. Underwhelming performances raising concerns, and teams adjusting their draft boards based on new information. This year's Combine generated no shortage of headlines, and I'm not just talking about the freaks we already knew were freaks. I'm talking about the guys who walked into Indy with athletic question marks and walked out with fewer of them. Now, as usual, what we knew last Tuesday, February 24th, the last time you and I got together, versus what we know today, Tuesday, March 5th, the Combine never fails to serve as a reminder of why the draft process remains so captivating. With the workout numbers in, teams are now refining their big boards, reassessing their evaluations, preparing for the pro days, and 30 individual private workouts. Today, I'll be breaking down the most notable performances from Indianapolis, both positive and negative. We'll go through some key measurables, talk about what they mean in the larger context of the player's projection, and discuss how the results may influence draft positioning. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. This year's Combine winners and losers. And of course, we're going to start this year the same way we did last, with the top performer from the Combine. This should come as no surprise to those of you who watched any of it. It was Sonny Styles, the linebacker out of Ohio State. He measured it at 6'5", 244 pounds. He ran the 40-yard dash in sub 4.5 in 4.46 seconds with a 10-yard split of 1.56. That's elite. He vertical jumped 43.5 inches, and he had a broad jump of 11'2". All four of those numbers right there are absolutely outstanding for a guy his size. Now, God only makes a few of those types of humans. A 4.46 linebacker is rare, but you pair that with a 43.5-inch vertical and that 11'2" broad jump at 240-plus pounds, that's genuine freak territory. Began his career at Ohio State as a safety, settled into linebacker back in 2024. So you've got defensive back explosion numbers and a legitimate linebacker frame. The tape already showed range and trigger, but Indy erased any lingering athletic questions for Sonny. Styles just didn't test well for his position. He actually tested as one of the best athletes ever to participate in Indy. The early first round is fully justified, and I honestly can't see him outside of the top 10 despite that off-ball linebacker position value. He really showed out this weekend. So that was your top performer. The top viral moment, I think that had to be Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end out of Oregon. He measured in at 6'3", 241 pounds, ran the 40-yard dash in 4.39. That's the fastest tight end since at least 2003, and it was treated like a Combine history moment for a reason. Also, gets lost in the shuffle, he jumped 11.1 in the broad jump, and another guy with a 43.5-inch vertical. Anything over 40 is truly freakish territory, and absolutely absurd numbers for the tight end position. To explain it, we already thought Sadiq was a mismatch piece, but this kind of testing turns like a pass-catching TE2 into defensive coordinator's nightmare. In the draft class, the TE1 conversation is over, although I'm still not sure I'd take him over last year's pair of first-rounders, Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland. That's another conversation for another day. Top viral moment for sure. I think the most electric tester at the Combine actually came at the quarterback position by way of Talon Green, quarterback from Arkansas, who measured in officially at 6'6", 227 pounds. The guy ran the 40 in 4.36 seconds. That's the fastest quarterback ever in the entire Combine. Another guy with a 43.5-inch vertical and 11'2" broad jump. Wide receiver explosion numbers in a quarterback frame. Look, We already knew Green was a dangerous runner on tape, but this kind of testing confirms he's one of the best raw athletes in the entire draft, not just at quarterback. 6'6", 4.36, elite explosion. That changes how defenses are going to have to account for him. Jalen Milroe went in the 3rd round last year. He's nowhere near this explosive. Just about as fast, nowhere near as explosive. The passing consistency for Talon, still the question, but the physical profile now firmly lives in the somewhere between Anthony Richardson and Josh Allen developmental upside spectrum. So a wide range there. I don't think he makes it outside of the top 100. Now, the fastest 40 at the Combine was the guy who most of us anticipated it being. It was Brennan Thompson, the wide receiver from Mississippi State. He measured in at 5'9", 164 pounds, soaking wet, ran the 40-yard dash in 4.26 seconds, had a 10-yard split time of 1.54. That's elite of elite. And it's the fastest run at the Combine in 2026 and the 5th fastest all time. So here's the context. What does the 4.26 mean for Brennan Thompson? This is a guy in 2025. He put up 57 catches for 1,054 yards and 6 touchdowns. That's 18.5 yards per catch, and that tells you exactly what he is on tape, a legitimate vertical stressor. He's on the smaller side, so I don't expect him to hold up as an every down player, but teams will use him as a spacing weapon. If you're a team that's missing speed or looking to add more, you just circled his name in red ink. Now, I'm normally wary of guys that can just run fast, see John Ross and many others, but the production proves he's more than merely a track guy with a set of shoulder pads. Really excited for Brennan Thompson and wherever he goes. So those are my superlatives, if you will. Let's just get into the winners. And I led this off with Jacob Rodriguez, the linebacker out of Texas Tech. Didn't run the 40, so we don't have a split. He didn't jump, but we do have a 3-cone and a short shuttle, and they were both awesome. Rodriguez was one of 8 guys to turn in a sub 7-second 3-cone. He ran 6.90 with a short shuttle time of 4.19. The 3-cone is excellent. The short shuttle is on the good side of acceptable. And I wanted to start with him because this is the exact kind of winner I care about, right? We talked about him a few times. He's still not the best athlete. You're not going to see numbers like Sonny Styles, but he answered the questions that we needed to do. He was able to validate the movement and coverage viability that coaches wanted to see, because production-wise, we already knew what he was. He didn't come into Indy as some mystery box. The numbers in 2025 were awesome. 122 total tackles, 63 of them solo, 59 assists. He had 4 interceptions. He forced 7 fumbles in 14 games. Not to mention the awards he won. He won the Butkus, he won the Nagurski, he won the Lombardi, which basically defined him as the nation's #1 defender. He's a dude that's just always around the ball. Bottom line, he didn't need a cartoonish workout. He just needed to prove that he could move in space at the next level, and he did just that. He made himself a bunch of money in Indianapolis, and I don't see how he falls out of day 2. Another winner from Indy last week, Eli Stowers, the tight end position out of Vanderbilt. Vertical jump 45.5, that's a record. Broad jump of 11'3", that shows explosiveness. If Sadiq was the fastest tight end headline, Stowers was the holy hell, what an athlete counterpunch. Multiple summaries called Stowers for setting the vertical jump record for TEs, and his overall week is being treated as a stock razor. The receiving production is backing it up, too. In 2025, he caught 62 passes for 769 yards and 4 touchdowns. He was a true chain-moving tight end with consistent production in the SEC. Also doesn't hurt that he garnered the John Mackey Award as the nation's top tight end. The tape is so fun to watch, not just because of Diego Pavia. Stowers just proved this past week that he's a bona fide NFL tight end who made teams recalculate their draft boards. So a couple of big winners at tight end here early. Want to get to the running back position. I think the biggest winner was Mike Washington Jr. out of Arkansas. Measured in at 6'1", 223 pounds. He ran the fastest 40 of all the running backs, 4.33 seconds with a 1.51 10-yard split. And again, at over 220 pounds. Statistically, last year, he ran for 1,070 yards, 8 touchdowns at a 6.4 yard per carry clip. He also caught 28 passes last year as well. I projected him last week. We talked about him as a guy who needed a good combine as a committee stabilizer type, but I think Indy pushed that into this guy might be running back 2 in this class. Talk about speed, you talk about production, you talk about pass game involvement. That's how you jump up a tier. And in a weak running back class behind Jeremiah Love, I think Mike Washington Jr. Had an excellent week in Indianapolis. Another one of my winners, one of my favorite guys coming in, Dennis Sutton, the edge out of Penn State, measured in at 6'6", 256, ran his 40 in 4.63 seconds. His 10-yard split was 1.63. A vertical jump of 39.5 inches, a broad jump of 10 foot 11, and a 3-cone drill of 6.90. Another one of those 8 guys to turn in a 3-cone under 7 seconds. He did it at 256 pounds. His vert was a half an inch shy of 40. The broad jump was an inch shy of 11 feet. One of the biggest winners, in my opinion. Not the pass rush first edge that excites folks on draft night, but an incredibly sound run defender with pass rush upside on tape that now looks even better with the testing numbers. Also, I watch a lot of Penn State football. Also has a knack for the timely plays. Honestly, I see him having a better NFL career than former Nittany Lion and first-round pick Chop Robinson, who tested way better, but is a much more limited in terms of usage at the next level. I think Dennis Sutton's going to be a real steal in the 3rd round. Another one of my big winners, and he may have gone to the top of his position class. I haven't re-released my top 50 big board yet. That'll be coming. Take a look for that in the next 2 weeks. Monroe Freeling, the offensive tackle out of Georgia. 6'7", 315 pounds, 40 time under 5 seconds at 4.93. He jumped 33.5 inches in the vert. Once again, 315 pounds. Broad jump of 9.7. That's excellent. The movement skills for his size popped. And it matters because it reinforces that stays at tackle instead of the dreaded guard-only projection. Small sample size, started only 16 games in college, but the length, the arms, 34.75 inches, and the athleticism might have him as the first tackle off the board. Seriously, going top 5. Almost like it reminded me of the Armin Membu jump last year, who was tackle 2, tackle 3, and then he came out with those eye-popping numbers, and he was the first tackle off the board, I believe, to the New York Jets. 4th overall? 5th overall? No, I think 5th. What a weekend for him. And Freeling, if you just look at him, he's 315 pounds, but he almost looks thin. Like he could put on weight. You could get him up to 330 without sacrificing athleticism. He's very raw, but I just think Monroe Freeling, if given time to grow, a year at guard before he takes over at tackle, a la Laramie Tunzel nearly a decade ago, I think that could do wonders for Monroe Freeling. Another winner, Chris Johnson, corner out of San Diego State. Ran 4.40 in the 40. Love that. 1.54 in the 10-yard split. That's elite. 38-inch vertical. Broad jump of 10.6. That's excellent. This was the tape measuring up with the testing, some alignment there. We always knew that Chris Johnson was a versatile corner. He's going to be able to play both inside and outside. Smooth mover. Ability to mirror receivers without grabbing and panicking. Always attack the catch point aggressively, and he's been known as a reliable wrap-up tackler in space. Bigger receivers can occasionally win above the rim with him, but the coverage discipline, the toughness, the athleticism, we project him as an early contributor. He also did 17 reps on the bench press, by the way. It was really nice to see. He had a very so-so Senior Bowl showing after a lot of hype going into Mobile. I still think he's a day 2 guy. I think he's a top 50 pick. And finally, another winner, this one at the quarterback position. It was coming. I already gave you my top 10 quarterbacks in this draft, and I'm not quite sure if I'm going to move on them yet, but as I explained to you in episode 2, 1 or 2 of this season, I ranked the quarterbacks and how I thought they were going to be in the NFL, not where I think they'll get drafted. And that's the case with this next guy. Drew Aller, the quarterback from Penn State. 6'5", 240 pounds. He didn't do any of the testing. He's still recovering from a broken ankle. Week 5 or week 6 from the season last year. But he was able to throw, and throw he did. So looking at Drew Aller's combine, you just look at him. You see the prototype frame, big arm, one of the most polarizing quarterbacks coming into Indy. The conversation around him never questioned the raw talent. It was always about his consistency. It was about his anticipation and really the mechanics, whether they hold up rep after rep. The ball absolutely jumps off his hand. Effortless velocity. Deep outs, they cut through the air. He threw a 50-yard pass, hardly broke a sweat. It just looked easy to him. When the base stayed clean, the placement followed. And that's the key with Aller. When the platform is right, the throw is high level. And in Indianapolis, the throwing session showed some flashes, but it also showed the warts. He's not a freelancer. He's a structured quarterback with A-plus tools. And that's where the upside lives, because when you combine that size, that arm strength, and the improved decision-making, hopefully, teams start convincing themselves they can coach the rest, right? I think the bottom line is this. Drew Aller is not making it past pick 40. That's where Tyler Shuck went last year. There's just too much upside, too much arm talent, too much size. You bet on traits at the quarterback position, and he's got all of them. So those are the winners I was breaking down. I do have another list of winners that I didn't write breakdowns for. Another tight end, Sam Roush from Stanford. A number of wide receivers I thought tested well. Jeremy Bernard from Alabama. Omar Cooper Jr. from Indiana. Skylar Bell from UConn. Offensive tackle Spencer Fano from Utah looked great. Caleb Banks, the defensive tackle from Florida, he is going to be something else. Absolute freak of nature, but you question the rep to rep. A couple of cornerbacks. D'Angelo Pons from Indiana. Explosive, even though he's 5'8", explosive. Takario Davis from Washington. Long, still ran 4.41. He was the only guy over 6'3" that ran under 4.45. And Dylan Thieneman, the safety out of Oregon, had a great workout. Absolutely safety number 2. He's another guy that doesn't make it out of the top 40. So those are my winners. Some losers that we have to talk about. Guys who did not raise their profile, if you will. And I don't want to pick on them too much, but I did mention a number of guys last week in our one sentence, one projection segment. Guys who I was looking forward to have a good week. So these guys did not have the week that we were hoping for. Emmett Johnson, the running back from Nebraska, came in at 5'10", 202 pounds. So not gargantuan, good size, but he ran the worst 40 of the running backs. He ran 4.56. Had a vertical jump of 35.5, a broad jump of 10 flat, and a 3-cone of 7.32. All good, nothing great. He came into Indy needing to prove where he belonged in this underwhelming running back class from an athletic standpoint, because the production at Nebraska was solid. 1,451 yards last year, 12 rushing touchdowns. He averaged 5.8 yards per carry. So you're talking about a workload back in the Big Ten with that Big Ten schedule, a reliable runner between the tackles. But the combine is ruthless at the running back position. And when you post the slowest 40 in the room, it kind of stinks. 4.56 doesn't kill you if you're 225 pounds and jumping out of the gym. But when the rest of the class is stacking 4.3s and 4.4s, by the way, this was statistically the fastest running back group of all time. There were 21 who went to the combine. Only 10 ran the 40. But of those 10, their average was the fastest running back group of all time. And he was the lowest. So when they're all stacking those 4.3s and 4.4s and separating themselves with that burst, you kind of feel the 4.56. The agility numbers also didn't erase that straight line concern either. There wasn't really a standout trait that jumped off the testing sheet. And here's the problem. Running back is a what can you do that others cannot position. So if you don't show speed and you don't show elite explosiveness and you don't show rare agility, now you're competing on just tape alone, and that can be a dangerous place to be. Another loser from this week, another guy that I liked, Malachi Fields, wide receiver from Notre Dame, 6'4.5", 218 pounds. His 40 was 4.61. He was the second slowest wide receiver. Had a nice vert, 38 inches. Had a broad jump at 10.4, not bad at all. in a 3-cone of 6.98. So he was under that 7-second threshold. Real nice there at 218 pounds. He did enter Indy with contested catch buzz after that big Senior Bowl week. Big frame. Has always been physical at the catch point. Productive. Legitimate day 2 receiver conversation happening. But the combine exposed, we'll call it a whisper that was already floating. Can he separate against NFL athletes? So that slower than expected 40 doesn't exactly destroy the receiver's profile by itself. Plenty of good pros have run in the mid 4.5s. And actually, if you go back, 4.55 is kind of that threshold at receiver. There's plenty of big receivers who ran in the mid 4.5s. Once you get over 4.6 is where you start, I don't know. But if your game isn't built on blazing speed and you're not elite in the short area agility, you're already being projected as more of a possession target, right? So then that 40 just becomes confirmation bias. So this week in Indy didn't really create a new concern for Malachi. It just amplified an existing one. And in a receiver class where multiple guys ran 4.4 flat or better, average looks slow. He's still draftable, still productive. He's still tough. But the could he sneak into the top 50 has likely cooled a bit. Another loser that I hate talking about. By the way, I don't like labeling these guys as losers. Like I don't like them at all. I just think they're losers relative to their combine performance. If they went in with, they were slated at this number, them falling from that number, even if they fall from 5 to 15, they're still a first round pick, but they kind of lost momentum, right? And I say that to say this. Ruben Bain Jr., the edge from Miami. I'm only going to give you one metric because there's only one metric that mattered for him. Arm length, under 31 inches. They came in officially at 30 7/8. The list of players with arm lengths, not even under 31, arm length under 32, who've been successful at the next level, it's not very long. I think Derek Barnett is the only one that really sticks out. He was a first-round pick out of Tennessee. I believe the Philadelphia Eagles. Had an okay career. Not terrible. Didn't live up to the first-round hype. But for Ruben Bain, the combine this week wasn't a bad explosion. This wasn't a bad 40 time. It wasn't about the testing measurables. Edge rusher is one of the most threshold-obsessed positions in the league. Length matters. Arm length specifically. Teams want to see 33-inch arms, ideally. Some want 34 minimum. When you come in under 31, it's not a nitpick. That's a flashing red light. The tape shows disruption. He wins with leverage. He wins with motor. But the combine is where the physical ceilings, as we mentioned, get measured in black and white. He didn't lose talent. He didn't lose any of that production. But what he did lose was margin for error. And that's how guys slide a half a round without actually doing anything wrong. Right? So unfortunately for Ruben Bain, I do think he fell out of the top 5. I don't think he fell out of the top 15. I would be thrilled if he made it to 11. But that's neither here nor there. Arm length was big for him. And we said weeks ago, listen, his arms are going to measure short. And they measured short. So unfortunately for Ruben, that's going to be all anybody talks about. I just hope he tears it up at his pro day at University of Miami. Another loser from the combine, still a player I like, Caden Proctor, offensive tackle from Alabama, measured in at, are you sitting down for this? 6'7", 352. Whew! Big fella. 40 time of 5.21, which is fine if you're 350 pounds. Vertical jump of 32.5, not bad at all. Broad jump of 9.1, barely made that 9-foot threshold. And 25 bench press reps, which average for offensive line. That's fine. His week was more subtle. The numbers were not disastrous. For a massive offensive lineman, 5.21 in the 40 and a 32.5-inch vertical are actually pretty respectable. But here's the thing. Respectable isn't what he needed this week. He came into Indy with franchise tackle upside attached to his name. And when you're carrying that kind of projection, the combine needs to confirm that rare movement, not just acceptable movement. The agility drills didn't silence the heavy feet concerns. The mirror work didn't scream elite lateral recoverer. Instead of teams saying, yep, that's our left tackle, go get him in round 1, they might have started saying, might he be better inside? And once the guard conversation starts, the valuation changes. That's just reality. Proctor didn't exactly tank his stock, but in a week where clarity is everything, he didn't really get the clarity he would have liked. And finally, and this one hurts. Again, I only pick on players that I like. All right. Emmanuel McNeil-Warren, the safety out of Toledo. 6'3.5", 201 pounds, 4.52 in the 40 with a 1.58 split, 10-yard split. It's under 1.6, so that's not bad. 35.5-inch vertical, okay. 10.2 in the broad, okay. Didn't run the 3-cone. This was a week for EMW where the testing needed to help, and it just didn't. The torpedo from Toledo already comes into the draft with the small school label attached, which means the combine is where you prove that your athletic traits can and will translate against NFL competition. And instead, those numbers landed more in the average range, and nothing really jumped off the sheet. That doesn't erase the tape. He still anticipates well in coverage, is quick to close on receivers, but will need to be protected by scheme to prevent speed mismatches. So when you're trying to overcome the level of competition conversation, Indy is where you separate yourself, and unfortunately, he didn't quite do that. Other losers this week I felt included Denzel Boston, the wide receiver from Washington, Elijah Surratt, the wide receiver from Indiana, Cassius Howell, the edge from Texas A&M, whose arms actually came up shorter than Reuben Baines, and Bishop Fitzgerald, the safety from Tennessee, who I'd really looked forward to. So that's it. That'll wrap up our deep dive into the winners and losers of the 2026 NFL Combine. Before I sign off, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment, shoot me an email, slide into the DMs. Whose performance shocked you? Who do you think helped or hurt their draft stock the most? I want the hot takes, the deep cuts, the insides that go beyond the stopwatch. Next week, I'm bringing in a special guest to help me out with our first mock draft special. We're going to be picking all 32 teams. We're not going to tip each other off ahead of time, so you'll get a real, honest, what do we do now? Where do we go from here? Reaction as we make our selections. Make sure you subscribe to the Draft Podcast on Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your football fix. And hey, if you're enjoying what we're doing, take a moment to leave a review. It means the world to us and helps other draft junkies find the show. That's all I got for you today, folks. Thanks again for listening to the Draft Podcast. I'm Paul Adamaszek, and I'll see y'all next week.